Viewer discretion is advised, as this story has been presented without any alterations to preserve its original context.
Tears streamed down my face as I cried. Why don't you just ask me? Why? 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 But still you cheated on me. That's the problem. He then replied, "That's why I'm sorry, because I know it's my fault." I shook my head and said, "No, it's my fault too. I love you, but I gave my virginity to John instead of you. Why I fell for who you are, not just for sex. I love you as you are." Unable to control myself, I kissed Mike while crying, whispering, "I'm sorry for not giving you my virginity. Instead, I gave it to another guy." A connection forged in pain and regret. Then, out of nowhere, I found myself asking Mike if he wanted to try me now. Honestly, I don't know what possessed me, but I think I wanted to give him a chance as an apology for not giving him my virginity earlier. I sat on Mike's lap and pulled out his penis. With a mix of excitement and guilt, I positioned myself on top of him, inserting his penis into my entrance. We tried to be as quiet as possible, hoping that John wouldn't hear us. But from the corner of my eye, I saw John watching. I couldn't help but think how perfect everything seemed. It felt like a fairy tale story with a happy ending. My relationship was amazing, and to top it off, we had all become close friends. We visited each other's dorms whenever we wanted, maintaining the tight bond we'd formed in high school. However, life threw an unexpected curveball my way when I started college. When I went to visit Mike, I was shocked by what I saw. Maria and Mike were half naked. They hadn't noticed me at first, but they must have thought the door was locked. Mike's penis was erect, and Maria had removed her lower clothing and opened her school uniform buttons, revealing her breasts. It was the most painful experience of my life. My heart shattered into a million pieces as I realized that everything wasn't perfect after all. Filled with anger, I slapped Mike repeatedly before storming out. The pain of betrayal cut deep. I broke up with him that day and confided in John about what had happened. He became my rock, the only person I could turn to for comfort and support. Mike tried to reach out to me several times after our breakup, but I ignored his calls. Maria also apologized, confessing that she had feelings for Mike since our high school camping trip. But it didn't matter anymore. The trust was broken. Consumed by anger, I slept with John, even though I was still a virgin. We decided to make a bold statement, a revenge plan of epic proportions. To drive home the point, I called Mike from John's phone, crying and telling him that we were going to make him pay for his actions. I would give my virginity to John as a twisted form of retribution. We chose a hotel for our dark rendezvous, since Maria and Mike could easily visit John's dorm and interrupt us otherwise. With newfound determination, I was ready to lose my virginity. In my mind, it was the ultimate revenge against Mike. He had never been able to experience me like this. But now, someone else would. To ensure that things went smoothly, we made sure to use condoms as protection. As we arrived at the hotel room, a strange silence enveloped us. Both of us were heartbroken and shattered by recent events. We didn't know how to start or what to do next, So we just let our emotions spill out. I admitted to John that I was still a virgin and scared to have sex, but also emphasized my desire not to get pregnant. Seeing me in such a vulnerable state, John released his penis for the first time. It was long and impressive, which only made me feel more flattered yet terrified at the same time. In that moment, I couldn't help but think how Maria must have been incredibly foolish to choose Mike when John had so much to offer. But I couldn't help but remember that Maria had shown a sexual interest in Mike since high school. That must have been what led her to sleep with him in the first place. Back to John. When he released his penis for me, I was shocked by how long it was. I immediately grabbed it and started sucking it. My very first time experiencing something like this. It felt so new and exciting. A completely different sensation compared to anything I'd ever known before. As I sucked on John's penis, I began to understand why Mike and Maria had given in to their desires. Trying something new is exhilarating. The excitement was building, and I couldn't wait for more. John was busy removing my pants and underwear while I continued sucking his penis. When he finally saw me naked, he exclaimed that I looked perfect. I wasn't quite sure what he meant by perfect shape, but he seemed to love the way my vagina looked. No extra skin outside of it. He licked it with such intensity, as if he wanted to devour it whole. The entire experience was incredibly exciting and new. There are just no words to describe the thrill of this newfound pleasure. John clearly enjoyed exploring my body too. Even on our first encounter, there was a connection between us that made everything feel so right. Finally, I felt ready for sexual intercourse. John asked me one last time if I really wanted to continue, but before I could verbally respond, I opened the condom and put it in him. Actions speak louder than words, right? As he prepared to insert his long penis into me, I hesitated a moment and said, "Do it slowly. I don't know how painful this is going to be." He reassured me with a smile, reiterating just how perfect my vagina looked before sucking it one more time. Then, finally, the moment arrived. He began to insert his penis. He licked all around my entrance, making sure everything was well lubricated and ready for him. I could feel myself becoming incredibly aroused as he prepared to penetrate me. It felt like destiny had led us to this point, and there was no turning back now. It was so painful. Tears streamed down my face as memories of my breakup with Mike resurfaced. But then something strange happened. From the pain, I began to experience an incredibly pleasurable sensation. It felt absolutely incredible. A brand new level of pleasure I'd never known before. Overwhelmed with excitement, I grabbed John and kissed him passionately. In the heat of the moment, I realized that this was my first time kissing another man. "You are so delicious," I whispered in his ear, unable to contain my emotions. John responded by saying, "It's even more delicious without a condom." Intrigued, I asked, "How?" "I've never tried it before." Driven by the intense pleasure I was experiencing, I removed the condom myself and let him penetrate me again. This time without any protection. And wow, it felt 10 times better. My breathing became rapid with excitement. I couldn't get enough of this feeling. As a wave of fear washed over me, I begged John to release inside me once he came so that we could still be safe. He agreed, and just as I was about to climax, he pulled out, saying he was about to ejaculate. But I wasn't ready for it to end, so I urged him to finish with me. "Let's do it together," I exclaimed, climbing on top of him in the 69 position. I tried sucking his penis slowly to prolong our pleasure, but the sensation was too intense. As I neared my orgasm, John's sperm began to release. In that moment, our climaxes synced perfectly. A perfect blend of physical and emotional ecstasy to solidify this unforgettable experience. I swallowed every drop of John's sperm, savoring the taste even though it wasn't something I typically enjoyed. The fact that I had been able to swallow his entire ejaculation without any spillage left me feeling incredibly satisfied. It was a testament to the intensity of our connection and the power of this shared experience. In that moment, I knew that my relationship with John had reached a whole new level, one that surpassed anything I'd ever felt before. I couldn't believe what had happened. In shock, I realized that there was no sperm left. His penis was completely dry after I sucked it all up. John seemed amazed by my ability, but I laughed and added that I had never done anything like this with Mike before. "I'm shocked too," I admitted, still in awe of myself for pulling off such a feat. Completely exhausted from the intense experience, I lay naked next to John, both of us drenched in sweat. Hugging him tightly, I expressed my satisfaction and gratitude. "I feel so satisfied right now," I confessed, relieved that the pain of heartbreak had temporarily vanished. "Thank you for this incredible experience," he responded with a smile, revealing that he felt the same contentment I did. We clung to each other, savoring the moment until sleep overtook us both. As I woke up in the middle of the night, my eyes fell upon John's sleeping face. It was surreal to think that I was sharing this intimate space with a man who wasn't Mike. The reality of it all hit me like a ton of bricks. I had lost my virginity and moved on so quickly. A wave of sadness washed over me as I remembered the pain of heartbreak. But there was also a strange sense of liberation in knowing that I had embraced this new chapter of my life. But then, while John was still asleep, a wild thought crossed my mind. I wanted to go for round 2. The pleasure we shared earlier was so intense that it felt like an addiction, a drug that numbed the pain and made me forget about everything else. In those moments, nothing else mattered except the raw passion between us. As if guided by some invisible force, I asked John if he'd be willing to do another round. He initially replied that he was too tired and not yet erect. But as soon as I started sucking on his penis, it sprang back to life in an instant. John was taken aback by how quickly I had gotten him aroused and inquired about the possibility of having sex without a condom again. Without hesitation, I agreed, setting the same condition as before. He would have to remove it once he came close to ejaculating. And there he did it. The pain of being penetrated for the second time in one night hit me hard, especially since I had just lost my virginity. It felt like too much, too soon. So I decided to call it quits for now, though deep down inside, I still craved more. I was absent from school and spent the entire time with John. We were both exhausted from our previous activities, so eating became our main focus before we drifted off to sleep again. Once I had regained some energy, I returned to my dorm to rest, while John's whereabouts remained a mystery to me. As for what kind of relationship we have now, it's complicated. He's not my boyfriend. More like a friends with benefits situation. We're close friends who engage in sexual activities without any romantic commitment or expectation. It's an odd dynamic, but somehow it works for us. A week later, John and I were chatting online. To be honest, I found myself looking forward to our interactions more than ever. Even though I haven't fully moved on from Mike, being with John seemed like a good way to distract myself and feel better. We decided to meet up again, and the desire for another encounter between us was undeniable. We made plans to spend some intimate time together once more. John suggested I take emergency contraception pills to avoid pregnancy, which I agreed to minimize any potential complications. We chose his dorm as our meeting place, since it's more relaxed about visitors compared to mine, where men are strictly forbidden. That morning, I took the pill without hesitation. It was almost as if the anticipation had a physical effect on me, making me feel hornier than ever. The thought of having sex with John again sent shivers down my spine, and I couldn't wait for that moment to arrive. To be honest, I don't know what it is about him that makes me feel this way, but I'm eager to experience it all over again. As the time approached for our rendezvous, excitement filled me up. The anticipation of seeing John and sharing another passionate encounter was too much to resist. There's something so thrilling about defying expectations, pushing boundaries, and embracing the unknown. And in that moment, with John waiting for me, I felt more alive than ever before. As soon as I arrived at John's dorm, we wasted no time getting naked and into position. The level of comfort between us was unbelievable. It felt like we were a real couple, even though our relationship had such loose boundaries. He looked absolutely irresistible, and the desire to feel his touch consumed me entirely. Without hesitation, I started sucking on his penis. It felt incredible, just like I remembered from last time. The taste, the texture, everything about it was perfect, and I couldn't stop thinking about it all the time. In that moment, I knew I had found something special with John. A connection that went beyond mere physical pleasure. We continued our intimate dance, his penis finding its way into my waiting entrance. It felt even better than before. Every sensation was heightened, and I reveled in the intensity of it all. As usual, John couldn't help but compliment me on how perfect my vagina looked, especially when we were under the soft glow of the bedside lamp. "It's so white and pink," he murmured, his eyes filled with admiration. "Your vagina looks so clean, white and pink. I love it so much." His words made me feel cherished and desired, confirming that this connection meant something special. Out of curiosity, I asked him about Mariah's vagina. How did it look compared to mine? He paused for a moment before confessing, "It doesn't look as perfect as yours. To be honest with you, whenever I think about you, I don't feel the pain anymore." He was referring to the emotional pain of losing his girlfriend, which he had confided in me earlier. My heart skipped a beat when I heard his words. I felt the same way. Just thinking about him made me forget my own heartache. "Me too," I admitted. "Just thinking about you makes me forget everything. It's like being with you and making love is all that matters." Since then, I've been spending almost every day at John's dorm, indulging in our newfound passion. We both find comfort and pleasure in each other's arms, escaping the pain of our past relationships through the power of physical intimacy. It's an intoxicating feeling, one that has me completely hooked on this addictive experience. Our secret rendezvous continued, but as with most things in life, Nothing stays hidden forever. Gossip has a way of spreading like wildfire, especially in close quarters like our dorm building. Since John and Mike lived in the same building, news traveled fast, even though their roommates were clueless about our connection. People assumed that we three, me, John, and Mike, were just close friends. But since I was always seen at John's place, rumors began to swirl that there was something more between us. Perhaps Mike had caught wind of these whispers. He chose the perfect moment to visit John's dorm when I was inside, adding fuel to the fire and making everyone believe our relationship was real. It was like he was deliberately seeking out this encounter, wanting to see firsthand what was going on between his best friend and me. One evening, while John and I were in the midst of our passionate lovemaking, there came a knock at the door. It wasn't aggressive or demanding, so we assumed it was just one of John's roommates. He quickly jumped up to attend to it, halting our session, and I remained on the bed, fully naked, and waiting for him to rejoin me. My mind was still lost in pleasure, and the thought of getting dressed never crossed my mind. As he opened the door, I saw Mike standing there, a sight that sent chills down my spine. He entered without hesitation. It wasn't unusual for John and Mike to visit each other's dorms unannounced. My eyes met his, and I could sense the shock in his expression. The memory of this moment is still vivid in my mind. How broken he looked, especially seeing me fully naked in his best friend's dorm. My heart sank as I watched him take a seat, turning away from me with such visible pain etched on his face. I was bracing myself for an explosion of anger or jealousy, but instead there was a heavy silence, followed by quiet sobs. John came back to me and whispered that Mike was crying. Since I couldn't see him, as he was facing away from me, the sound of his sorrow cut deep into my soul. Despite knowing that I hadn't done anything wrong, a part of me felt terrible for him. His pain was palpable, and it made me question my own feelings. In that moment, surrounded by the evidence of our connection, I wondered if I still loved Mike. After all, he had been such an important part of my life before John came along. "I'm sorry, Emily," Mike said through his sobs, his pain evident in every word. It was strange, but I felt an echo of his agony within myself, as if his heartache were somehow infecting me. John's calmness throughout this whole ordeal made me proud. It showed that he wasn't a typical guy who would react with aggression or jealousy. This only fueled my desire to understand the full story and hear John's side of things. So I agreed when he suggested we talk heart to heart. After quickly dressing myself, I approached Mike slowly and whispered, "I'm sorry too." Tears streamed down my face as I hugged him tightly while he sat there, his eyes overflowing with tears. He repeated his apologies, revealing that Maria was the one who had been flirting with him ever since they slept together at the high school camp. Mike confessed that he'd tried to ignore her advances, but she persisted so relentlessly that he eventually caved in. I did my best to ignore all her flirtation, but I just lost control one time, he admitted, his voice choked with remorse. "I'm so sorry. I didn't become the perfect boyfriend you deserved." As Mike spoke, it dawned on me how quickly I had reacted. But deep down, I couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. I wanted to confront him directly. "But if you really loved me, then why did you have sex with Maria?" Mike sighed heavily before responding, his eyes filled with guilt. "I tried my best. It's almost been a year since Mariah started trying to get me. She was persistent and wouldn't give up, but I was trying my hardest to stay loyal. Then, when she found out you were still a virgin, she took advantage of me. She told me that John and she had already tried having sex together, and it was time for us to do the same. She always made me feel jealous about them with John, until I started to realize that I wanted to experience the same feeling she was talking about. Maria insisted that we have sex, you know, since you were still a virgin. But because I knew you didn't want to, I said we couldn't do it just yet. I asked Mike how long they had been doing this, and he replied that it was almost a month already. I admit that I became addicted to Maria and grew confident in our actions. But even you wouldn't find out. But oh, what a huge mistake that was. Tears streamed down my face as I cried. Why don't you just ask me? Why? 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 I thought you didn't want to, while Maria kept encouraging me almost every time she had the chance. The more I thought about it, the harder I cried, realizing it was actually my fault. So I decided to call it quits for now. But still, you cheated on me. That's the problem. He then replied, "That's why I'm sorry, because I know it's my fault." I shook my head and said, "No, it's my fault too. I love you, but I gave my virginity to John instead of you. Why I fell for who you are. Not just for sex. I love you as you are." Unable to control myself, I kissed Mike while crying, whispering, "I'm sorry for not giving you my virginity. Instead, I gave it to another guy." Mike replied softly, "It's okay. Other girls took my virginity too, instead of it being for you." It felt like we were sharing a deep understanding, a connection forged in pain and regret. Then, out of nowhere, I found myself asking Mike if he wanted to try me now. Honestly, I don't know what possessed me, but I think I wanted to give him a chance as an apology for not giving him my virginity earlier. Mike responded with hesitation. "How? John is here." His words brought me back to reality, and I realized the complex situation we were in. Trapped between our past mistakes, present emotions, and uncertain future. I sat on Mike's lap and pulled out his penis. With a mix of excitement and guilt, I positioned myself on top of him, inserting his penis into my entrance. We tried to be as quiet as possible, hoping that John wouldn't hear us. But from the corner of my eye, I saw John watching.